Something strange happened while I was staying at my grandparents' old bar in rural Finland. Hey Reddit. It's been a couple of years already, but I need to tell this story since I know no one in real life will believe me. This is my first time posting here, and English isn't my first language, so sorry if my writing isn't perfect. A few years ago I stayed with my grandparents in a small town in eastern Finland. The town was tiny. One grocery store, one church, lots of forest. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone. Their house was attached to an old bar called Heikenbari, named after my grandfather Heikki. He owned it for decades before closing it down years ago. The strange thing was that he never really stopped taking care of it. Every evening he would still go downstairs, wipe the counter, check the tables, and lock the front door before coming back upstairs. I always assumed it was just routine, something people do after spending most of their life in the same place. I arrived during a snowstorm. The drive there was miserable. Snow everywhere, terrible visibility, and roads that looked like they disappeared into the forest. By the time I got there I was exhausted. That first night I woke up around 1 in the morning because I heard voices downstairs. At first I thought it was the television, but after listening for a minute I realized it sounded more like a group of people talking. Nothing dramatic, no shouting or arguing, just normal conversation. A few laughs, a chair moving, and the sound of glasses touching together. Exactly the kind of noise you'd expect from a small local bar. Then I heard someone say, "Is Heikki still working tonight?" That got my attention because that's my grandfather's name. The second I opened my bedroom door, everything stopped. Completely. No voices, no movement, nothing. I stood there for a while trying to figure out if I'd imagined the whole thing, then eventually went back to bed. The next morning I checked the bar. It was empty, dusty, and cold, exactly what you'd expect from a place that had been closed for years. But there was a smell in the room that bothered me. Beer, old cigarette smoke, wet winter jackets. It wasn't strong, but it somehow smelled fresh. What really caught my attention were wet footprints behind the counter. Not muddy, just wet, like someone had recently walked in from the snow. I followed them across the floor until they stopped near the old jukebox. When I touched the jukebox, it was warm. Not hot, just warm enough that I noticed it immediately. I tried to come up with a reasonable explanation. Old electrical equipment maybe, heat from somewhere, anything. Later I mentioned it to my grandmother. She immediately stopped smiling and asked, "You heard them already, didn't you?" I asked who she meant, but she didn't answer directly. Instead she told me that during bad winters, especially in the 80s and 90s, people sometimes got stranded on those roads. The bar was often the only place nearby with lights on late at night. A lot of people stopped there during storms. Some of them never made it home afterward. I thought she was just telling old local stories. A couple of nights later I heard the voices again. This time I went downstairs. The bar was completely dark, but I could swear I heard people talking inside. Not loud, just enough to hear. I stood outside the door for maybe 30 seconds. Then the conversation stopped. A moment later I heard someone cough. A deep, rough cough from inside the room. I opened the door immediately. Nobody was there. The room was empty. The thing that really got to me happened on my last night there. Another snowstorm had moved in. The wind was hitting the building so hard the windows were rattling. I couldn't sleep, so I went downstairs to get some water. As I passed the entrance to the old bar, I noticed light coming through the front windows. Not bright, just a faint yellow glow. For a second I thought my grandfather had left a light on. When I looked through the glass, I saw him standing behind the counter. He wasn't doing anything unusual. Just standing there, looking toward the tables like he was waiting for customers. I almost opened the door. Then I noticed he wasn't alone. There were shapes sitting at a few of the tables. I couldn't make out faces. Just dark figures. Maybe coats hanging over chairs, maybe shadows, maybe people. I honestly don't know. Then my grandfather turned his head toward me. I stepped back without even thinking. A second later the lights were gone, and the room was completely dark again. The next morning I told him what I'd seen. He didn't laugh. He didn't seem surprised either. He just sat quietly for a while before saying, "Some people never got to leave properly." That was all he said. Later that day, when I was leaving, I looked back at the building one last time. My grandfather was standing in the front window of the bar watching me go. I waved. He waved back. But for a moment I thought I saw someone standing beside him, just inside the darkness of the room, waiting. Maybe it was a reflection. Maybe it wasn't. I still don't know. The thing that bothers me most isn't what I saw. It's what my grandmother said before I left. She told me my grandfather still opened the bar every evening because he didn't want anyone arriving from the cold to find the door locked. I laughed when she said it. She didn't. One last thing before I end this post. A few years have passed since all of this happened. My grandfather passed away last winter. My grandmother couldn't stay in that town by herself after that, so she sold the house and the old bar. She lives much closer to me now in the city and honestly seems happier there. As far as I know, Heikenbari was bought by a young couple from another part of Finland. They renovated most of the building and reopened it under a different name. I haven't been back since. A few months ago I was talking to my grandmother about the place and asked if she thought my grandfather really believed what he used to say about people arriving from the cold. She was quiet for a long time before answering. Then she said, "Your grandfather never believed they were ghosts." I asked what he thought they were. She looked out the window and smiled sadly. Customers. That was the end of the conversation. Sometimes, especially during heavy snowstorms, I still think about Heikenbari and the people my grandfather might have been waiting for all those years. The strange thing is that after he died, nobody in town reported seeing lights in the bar at night anymore. At least not until the new owners moved in. A few months after they reopened, I came across a review online from someone who had stopped there during a winter storm. Most of it was positive. Good food, friendly service. But one sentence stuck with me. Funny old place. When we arrived after midnight, the owner asked if we were the first customers of the night. We weren't. There were already a few people sitting quietly in the corner, but when I looked again, the tables were empty. I've never told the new owners any of this. And I don't think I ever will. I work in law enforcement. My partner and I just lied on an official police report because nobody would believe what we shot at tonight. I work the graveyard patrol in a jurisdiction where the trees outnumber the people 10,000 to 1. It is a vast, deeply isolated county dominated by dense pine forests, winding dirt logging routes, and sprawling properties owned by people who value extreme privacy. You get used to the quiet. You learn to appreciate the long hours of driving through pitch-black roads with nothing but the hum of the engine and the dashboard lights to keep you company. But the extreme isolation also means that when something goes wrong out here, help is a very long way away. My partner and I were parked near a deserted county intersection, drinking lukewarm coffee from thermos flasks, when the radio mounted on the dashboard crackled to life. The dispatcher's voice broke through the static. She was a veteran operator, someone who usually handled horrific car accidents and domestic disputes with a flat, unwavering calm. Tonight, her voice was entirely different. Her tone was elevated, tight with genuine stress. Unit 4, I need you to respond to a 10 to 54 at the estate at the end of the Upper Ridge Road. The dispatcher said. I have an open line with the homeowner. He is frantic. I cannot get a clear read on the situation. My partner grabbed the radio microphone. Dispatch, can you confirm the nature of the intruder? Is the caller providing a description? Negative. The dispatcher replied, a faint tremor echoing over the frequency. The caller is not speaking to me anymore. I am just hearing background noise. It sounds like heavy hooves. Like livestock stomping on a hardwood floor. And a man screaming. The transmission cut off, leaving a heavy, oppressive silence in the cab of our cruiser. My partner and I exchanged a single, hard look. He dropped the vehicle into drive, flipped on the emergency lights without hitting the sirens, and floored the accelerator. The drive took nearly 20 minutes. The paved highway eventually gave way to a deeply rutted, unpaved gravel road that wound steeply up into the heavily forested hills. The tree canopy grew incredibly dense, the interlocking branches blocking out the moonlight and creating a suffocating tunnel of darkness around the speeding cruiser. We finally breached the tree line and pulled into a massive, circular driveway. The property was a sprawling, multi-story log cabin built from incredibly thick, dark timber. It belonged to a notoriously wealthy big-game hunter, a man who spent his fortune traveling the globe to harvest exotic trophies. The house sat in total darkness. Not a single exterior light was burning. We stepped out of the cruiser, drawing our heavy flashlights and our service weapons. The night air was freezing. We approached the front porch, keeping our boots light on the wooden planks. We did not need to knock. The massive, heavy oak front door had been completely obliterated. The thick wooden panels were fractured and splintered, but the damage had not been inflicted by someone trying to break in. The jagged shards of wood were pushed outward, pointing toward the porch. Someone, or something, had violently smashed their way out of the house. Someone wanted out in a massive hurry. My partner whispered, holding his weapon tightly against his chest as he swept his flashlight over the broken threshold. Or something pushed them out. I replied, keeping my voice incredibly low. We stepped carefully over the splintered wood and entered the cabin. The interior was a cavernous, vaulted space completely dedicated to death. The walls were lined top to bottom with an absurd collection of taxidermy mounts. Massive grizzly bears stood in the corners, permanently frozen in aggressive, roaring postures. Timber wolves stalked across the upper lofts, and dozens of heavily antlered deer heads protruded from the dark timber walls. Our flashlight beams swept across the room, catching the reflection of hundreds of polished glass eyes staring blindly back at us from the dark. The air inside the house was thick and stale, smelling heavily of formaldehyde and fresh, pooling blood. Clear the ground floor. My partner ordered, moving slowly toward the kitchen archway. Keep your angles tight. Whatever did this could still be in here. I moved toward the massive stone fireplace dominating the center of the living room. The heavy leather furniture had been tossed aside, the heavy coffee table overturned and splintered. I found the homeowner resting against the base of the stone hearth. He was dead. The scene was incredibly brutal. His chest and abdomen had been violently gored, punctured by multiple deep, jagged wounds that were entirely too wide and ragged to have been caused by a knife or a spear. The fabric of his flannel shirt was shredded, soaked through with dark blood that pooled heavily onto the rugs beneath him. His eyes were wide open, locked in an expression of terror. "I have a victim," I called out softly. "He is gone. Massive puncture trauma." My partner emerged from the kitchen, stepping carefully around the overturned furniture to reach my side. He aimed his light down at the body, his jaw setting into a hard, rigid line. If this was a bear or a feral animal that got inside, we would see muddy tracks. My partner said, sweeping his flashlight across the pristine hardwood floor surrounding the blood pool. "There is no mud. There are no paw prints leading to the door." I lowered my beam to the floor, tracking the space immediately surrounding the victim. My partner was right. There were no tracks. However, there was a distinct, highly unusual trail leading away from the body toward the dark hallway branching off the living room. It was a trail of dry, yellowed synthetic stuffing, small clumps of brittle animal hair, and thin, rusted pieces of shaping wire. I followed the trail of debris with my light, letting the beam travel slowly up the adjacent timber wall. The wall was decorated with a series of framed Polaroid photographs. They featured the homeowner standing proudly in this exact living room, holding a hunting rifle, posing beneath his various trophies. I looked closely at the photograph positioned directly at eye level. It showed the man smiling widely, standing beneath a truly massive, record-breaking elk head mounted on a heavy wooden plaque above the stone fireplace. I immediately raised my flashlight, aiming the concentrated beam directly at the space above the stone hearth. The heavy wooden plaque was securely bolted to the timber. But the plaque was entirely empty. The iron bolts that normally secured the mount had been violently ripped outward. The massive elk head was missing. "The elk is gone," I said, a cold knot forming rapidly in my stomach. "What are you talking about?" My partner asked, keeping his weapon aimed down the dark hallway. "Look at the picture on the wall," I insisted, pointing my beam at the photograph and then back up to the empty wooden plaque. "Look at the mount. It was ripped off the wall." Before my partner could process the missing trophy, a sound echoed from the deep darkness of the hallway. It was a heavy thud. Clop. 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 It sounded exactly like hard, solid hooves striking the wooden floorboards, moving with a heavy, unnatural, dragging gait. We immediately raised our weapons, aligning our flashlight beams perfectly down the narrow corridor. "Police department. Show yourself right now," my partner yelled, his voice booming aggressively through the silent, cavernous house. The clopping sound stopped. A shape stepped slowly out of an adjacent side room, entirely blocking the hallway. My brain completely rejected the visual information entering my optic nerves. It was a patchwork, horrifying abomination of stitched flesh and wire. The massive, decapitated head of the missing elk was roughly, violently sewn onto the thick, hulking torso of a grizzly bear. The creature stood upright on a set of mismatched, decaying animal legs that buckled and twitched under the uneven weight. Thick, crude black sutures crisscrossed the matted fur, bursting open in several places to reveal dry, yellowed stuffing and rusted metal armature wire protruding from the seams. The elk head scraped against the ceiling, the massive antlers gouging deep grooves into the drywall. The creature's neck snapped at an impossible angle, and its dead glass eyes caught the glare of our flashlights. "Drop your..." My partner screamed, completely unable to finish the standard command as his mind failed to comprehend the monstrosity standing before us. The creature lunged forward. It moved with a terrifying, jerky speed, its mismatched hooves tearing into the floorboards as it lowered the massive antlers directly toward our chests. My partner fired his weapon rapidly, the deafening cracks of the caliber handgun echoing violently in the enclosed space. I watched the bullet strike the center of the creature's stitched chest. The impacts produced small, explosive puffs of dry dust and stuffing. The creature did not flinch. It did not even slow down. The bullet simply passed harmlessly through the dry hide and the wire frame. "Move!" I yelled, grabbing my partner by the shoulder and dragging him backward. We scrambled away from the hallway, diving frantically into a heavy set of double doors located just off the main living area. We slammed the thick oak doors shut behind us, the heavy brass latch engaging with a sharp click. "Brace it!" my partner shouted. We threw our combined body weight against a massive, solid wood bookshelf sitting against the wall, dragging it aggressively across the carpet until it completely blocked the double doors. A second later, a devastating force slammed into the other side of the wood. The oak doors groaned violently, the hinges straining and protesting under the immense weight of the creature attempting to batter its way inside. The sharp points of the antlers pierced entirely through the upper panels of the wood, splintering the oak and retreating for another strike. We backed away from the barricade, sweeping our lights around the enclosed space. We were trapped in the homeowner's private study. The room was cluttered and chaotic. Empty glass liquor bottles were scattered heavily across the expensive rugs, and dozens of half-burned candles sat in pools of melted wax on the surfaces. Sitting directly in the center of a heavy desk was an open, leather-bound journal. I rushed to the desk, illuminating the pages with my flashlight. "Keep your weapon on the door," I told my partner, leaning over the messy, frantic handwriting scrawled across the paper. The entries were unhinged, heavily detailing a deep, unraveling paranoia. I read the scattered paragraphs rapidly as the heavy, rhythmic battering continued against the barricaded doors. The woods are deeply angry. I took far too much from the tree line. I hunted for sport, and now the forest is hunting me. The spirit is ancient. It lives in the timber. It watches me from the edge of the property line every single night. I can feel the vapor of it pressing against the windows. When the door gives way, you light the fabric. Do not hesitate. My partner holstered his firearm, his hands shaking as he pulled a metal Zippo lighter from his vest. He flipped the lid, the small, bright flame illuminating his pale face. The heavy doors could not sustain another impact. The central panels shattered inward, sending sharp shards of splintered wood flying across the study. The creature rammed its massive shoulder against the gap, violently shoving the bookshelf aside with terrifying strength. The abomination stepped into the room, its mismatched hooves cracking against the floorboards. The dead, glass eyes of the elk head reflected the small flame of the lighter. It lowered its massive antlers, preparing to charge directly into our chests. "Light it!" I screamed. My partner thrust the lighter forward, touching the open flame directly to the alcohol-soaked strip of curtain fabric. The cloth ignited instantly, a bright, aggressive line of fire racing down toward the neck of the glass bottle. The creature lunged forward, its jaws snapping violently in the air. I stepped directly into the charge, winding my arm back, and threw the glass bottle directly into the center of the creature's matted chest. The thick glass shattered explosively upon impact. The alcohol coated the dry, brittle fur and the exposed, yellowed stuffing protruding from the bursting sutures. The burning wick met the highly flammable liquid in a violent, concussive whoosh. The entire creature ignited like a massive candle. The dry hide, the ancient preservation chemicals, and the synthetic stuffing caught fire instantly, creating a towering, roaring inferno in the center of the study. The creature thrashed violently, its hooves stomping chaotic rhythms against the burning rug. The massive antlers tore blindly into the drywall, ripping heavy chunks of plaster free as the fire rapidly consumed the stitched flesh. An inhuman, echoing shriek filled the enclosed room. The sound was deafening, vibrating deep within my teeth and my skull. The vessel rapidly collapsed under the intense heat. The burning hide withered, the legs buckled, and the massive monstrosity crashed heavily to the floor, instantly reducing to a charred, smoking heap of blackened wire, melted glass, and gray ash. The oppressive atmosphere within the cabin vanished instantly, leaving only the choking smoke of a fire. We did not wait to investigate the ashes. My partner grabbed his fire extinguisher, aggressively dousing the burning rug to prevent the flames from spreading to the timber walls, and then we ran. We sprinted out of the study, navigated blindly through the dark living room past the gored victim, and burst through the splintered front doors into the freezing exterior. We sat leaning against the cold metal of our cruiser, gasping for clean air, waiting for the state police and the fire department to arrive. We meticulously coordinated our official statements. We wrote exhaustive reports detailing a severely chaotic scene, an unknown human intruder who fled into the dense tree line, and an accidental fire caused by the homeowner knocking over candles during a violent struggle. We entirely omitted any mention of a walking, stitched freak. The state detectives accepted the narrative without question, attributing the brutal, wide puncture wounds to a specialized, exotic hunting weapon wielded by the unknown assailant. The estate was heavily processed, and the massive collection of hunting trophies was eventually boxed up and scheduled to be auctioned off to private collectors to cover the deceased man's substantial debts. I am posting this account here today as a desperate warning to the public. If you are an amateur collector, or if you frequently purchase estate sale hunting trophies, you need to understand the danger of bringing those items into your home. You do not know what kind of energetic tether the taxidermist bound to the hide, and you do not know what kind of spiritual vapor might be utilizing the glass eyes to watch you sleep. I know this, because before the state detectives cleared the scene, I utilized my authority as the responding officer to securely impound one small item from the house to serve as a baseline forensic sample of the homeowner's preservation materials. It was a small, perfectly preserved stuffed red fox. I placed the evidence bag firmly on the left side of my desk at the precinct before my shift ended. I went down the hall to get a cup of coffee. When I returned to my desk 3 minutes later, the sealed evidence bag was sitting on the extreme opposite side of my desk. And the fox was facing the other way. I went camping with my girlfriend's family. Things were going fine, until the blood sacrifice. It changed, somehow it all changed. I can't believe it, but I can't deny what I saw with my own eyes. Something happened here, something impossible. Summer and her brother knew what it was, they called out to it, and something answered. I hoped it might have just been a fever dream, but now I have to reconcile the truth. It's all real. It's all here right now, and worst of all, it spoke to me. Just the other day, I was heading out on a camping trip with my girlfriend Summer. We had met at school. Both of us were taking the same environmental science course, and we hit it off. We started dating shortly after, and things had been going great. Before long, I was convinced I had met the girl of my dreams. She was so kind, thoughtful, funny, and beautiful. I was head over heels. When we discussed our families, I learned that hers was very enigmatic. I had not gotten to meet any of them yet, but she told me they were naturalists who owned land all across the state, including cabins and camping places around the Olympic Peninsula. She asked me if I would like to go camping with her, to a place her family used to visit often. I was thrilled at the chance to spend more time with her, especially alone and in the majesty of nature. I was even considering using the opportunity to propose. We set out on the 3-hour drive to Leshy Ridge. The time spent driving was not quite as comfortable as I expected it to be. This was mainly because it was not just Summer and I going to the campsite. Her brother Sean was coming with us too. I was a little flustered when I found out, but Summer just smiled at me and said, "I can't say no to my family, come on, please. I promise it will be worth it." I had given in and agreed, not wanting to disappoint her. I knew I would have to meet some of her family eventually, so I figured I could get to know her brother on this trip, even if I hadn't planned for it. Despite the discomfort of going camping with someone I had never met, I wanted to show Summer I could get along with her family. The drive was pleasant enough, if not a little awkward. Sean was very reserved and did not respond with much beyond a grunt when I tried speaking with him. I tried to get him talking as we drove, but he shrugged and ignored me. Summer played it off and just smiled when I looked at her for reassurance. I let it go and kept driving. We started to ascend higher into the mountains, and the road began to vanish, replaced by rough rocks and dirt. It was strange, but as we moved, I thought I saw the green sheen of trees above us start to look oddly muted and colorless. I wondered if it was just an optical illusion from looking out beyond the skyline and near the sun. I blinked hard and focused on the road again. The winding path finally led to a small clearing with wide open space and a larger plateau looming overhead. The area was covered in grass and trees, though the same strange gray tinge lingered here as well. Before I could ask for confirmation, Summer shouted, "Here it is." She giggled, and before the van had fully stopped, she leapt out. She twirled around in a flourish, and Sean hopped out with a grunt and slammed the door. As the two embraced the energy of the area, I found myself a bit puzzled. They were acting like this was some great spot, but I had a hard time agreeing with the sentiment. The trees looked oddly dull, the normal vibrant green hues seemed lost, like they had forgotten that an evergreen was supposed to be just that. The lack of background sounds bothered me as well. The normal sounds of the forest were missing. It was desolate and barren. There was no birdsong to provide the normal pleasant backdrop of an area like this. The whole place just seemed like it was caught in a dead zone. I looked back at Summer and did not say what I was thinking. I didn't want to say anything to offend her, since she had mentioned this place was important to their family. I just couldn't understand why. I tried to ignore my apprehension and distract myself by unloading the van. Summer approached me, likely suspecting my concern, and pulled me aside. "It means a lot to me that you are doing this. This camping trip might seem sudden, but it will be worth the sacrifice. I know it might seem weird, with Sean here. But this place." She paused and looked thoughtfully around before continuing, "It's special, it means a lot to my family. I would do anything to protect it and them. I'm just so happy you can be here with us now, to help us." She leaned in, kissed my cheek, and then went back to dancing around the campground. I was so happy to see her like that, dancing beautifully without a care in the world, that I didn't even consider the true meaning of her words. I finished unloading our stuff and was ready to get started on the tents. I asked Sean if he needed help with his, but he scoffed and just wandered off into the trees. I was about to call after him when Summer grabbed my arm. "Just let him go, he likes to explore. Who knows, he might come back with a sunnier attitude." She smiled, and I couldn't tell if she really believed that or was just trying to placate me. I stopped worrying when she leaned in and kissed me, then whispered, "Set up the tent, and when Sean is asleep tonight, we might see what else we can do." She lingered for a moment before turning around, grabbing the cooler, and pulling out some supplies. "But for now, I'm going to make us some lunch. Would you help grab some smaller kindling sticks so we can get a fire going, and I can make us something?" I agreed and set out to find some. As I moved around the perimeter of the campground, I was struck by the eerie effect I had noticed earlier when we arrived. The only sound I could hear was the crunching of overly dry leaves and desiccated branches. The effect was unnerving, and I paused to listen more closely to a strange sound I thought I heard nearby. The sound had stopped, but I heard a voice then. I crept along a small trail further into a thicket overgrown with brittle blackberry vines. I saw Sean, kneeling down on the ground in a small clearing. It seemed like he was talking to someone or something. I don't know if I can do it. I've never done that before. I know Summer has, but I'm not like her. I hear the family too, I just don't know." He paused and suddenly looked up from whatever he was talking to. I was too embarrassed to be caught snooping, so I dropped to my stomach and held still. I listened closely and heard Sean rise. I lifted my head just enough to see him looking in the other direction. He muttered something under his breath and started walking away, fortunately picking a different path than the one that would have led him right on top of me. When I was satisfied he was gone, I let out a deep breath. I didn't know who he was talking to, but the whole thing was strange. I collected a few of the dried-out sticks I had trampled to get out there and returned to camp. As I was helping Summer start the fire, I saw Sean had set up his tent and was inside it already. I considered the strange conversation he was having with himself. I thought at the time that he must just be a bit eccentric. I shrugged it off and tried not to let the weird incident bother me. By then, the fire was going, and Summer had started grilling some bratwurst for us. I was starving and sat down in one of the chairs we had set around the fire and relaxed. With the soft crackling of the fire and the smell of smoke, I was finally able to ignore the odd ambience of the place and just enjoy myself. Just when I was finally relaxed, I heard a loud crunching noise from nearby. I looked over to the clearing by where the van was parked and couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was an animal, a raccoon by the shape and markings of its tail. However, that indication was all I had to go on, because the thing I saw standing there twitching unnaturally did not look like any raccoon I had seen before. Its tail still had some fur with the telltale rings, but its upper body was a mangle of exposed muscle and soft tissue. It looked like it had been partially skinned but was still moving around somehow. The flesh on its snout was peeled back, revealing a gruesome rictus of sharp teeth, and the eyes seemed horribly bloodshot. I paused for a long moment, just staring at the thing. I looked over at Summer, and she had spotted it as well. She was standing still, waiting to act. The small animal stepped forward, and its tail rose up high. It turned itself to a side profile and looked directly at us, hissing in a sound that was terrible with how unlike a normal raccoon it was. The thing looked half dead and rabid. I was afraid that in that moment, it would just charge at us and start attacking. I slowly stood up and tried to put myself between it and Summer. I wanted us to get into our tents since the path to the van was blocked. The thing looked dangerous, and whatever it was afflicted with, I did not want any of us to get it. Before we could do anything else, the hideous raccoon turned to look at something in the distance. Then it hissed and ran off into the woods. In the next moment, it was gone, and I was trying to make sense of what had just happened. What the hell was that? I finally asked, breaking the silence. Summer let out a breath and relaxed, then shrugged apologetically. I don't know. I know a lot of them live in these woods, but that one looked worse than most. The illness brought on by pollution might be the cause. That is why my family's work is so critical. To help revive these places so that the creatures that live here can thrive. She gestured all around us and had an oddly serene look on her face, despite the encounter. She looked back at me and smiled apologetically. I'm sorry, I know you must be worried. If there are any more, we will be prepared. I think Sean brought some deterrents. She went up to his tent and told him what happened. He emerged a moment later holding a long rod which sparked at the end, and I realized it was some type of cattle prod. In his other hand, he held a large hunting knife. Which way did the thing go? He asked with a more disturbing force of will than I had heard him use before. Summer tried to calm him down. It's okay, Sean, we don't need to go kill it. Just keep the prod handy in case it comes back to scare it off. Geez, calm down. She scoffed at him, and he looked disappointed. After a while, I finally calmed down when I was satisfied the deranged creature was gone. It was starting to get dark, and I stepped away to take a leak. I was still close enough to hear Summer and Sean talking about something. I didn't want to pry, but I overheard bits of what she was saying to him. Come on, Sean. I know you don't like it out here, but it gets better. I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's for the family. The conversation grew quiet, and I finished up. At the time, I thought that Summer was trying to encourage her brother. Eventually, when it was near full dark, I was ready to call it a day. Summer emerged from the tent, wearing her hiking gear. I was confused and asked her what was going on. She grinned back at me and said, "The stars are so bright out tonight, it would be amazing to see them from the lookout. There is a small plateau just up there, only a 10-minute hike. Come on, I know it's dark, but it will be worth it, I promise." Before I could ask why at night or if Sean would be coming too, Sean unzipped his tent and walked out, holding his cattle prod and a flashlight, with a large knife tucked into a vest pocket. Summer was rummaging in her bag and produced an antique lantern I had never seen before. She lit it reverently, and the intricate shapes carved into the sides cast luminous shapes across the campground. The light show distracted me from my concern about venturing out into the dark, and I followed her out of camp. "Come on, let's go to the lookout," she called out and began to sing. "The moon is shining bright, and the stars glow in our hair, the nighttime music's magic, and there's spirits in the air. The forest trees will guide our way, imperious and tall, to lead the way on path and trail to answer family's call." Summer kept dancing and singing, swinging the lantern in arcs that shone its warm light on the few shadowy spots untouched by the bright moonlight. We walked on, and I found out from Summer that this hike at night was another family tradition. I had concerns, but I figured she knew this place pretty well, so I felt a little better about heading up to the lookout in the middle of the night. As we walked, I saw she was right about the stars. They burned brilliantly above, and the serene backdrop removed the subtle aura of decay that this place had in the daytime. I started to feel a bit more optimistic about the trip. As we walked, I saw something odd in the distance, about 100 feet from the small area where the climb to the lookout was. It looked like a small house or cabin. I called it out as we walked. "Hey, what's that building?" Sean and Summer both paused, and Sean aimed a light towards the structure. To my surprise, he answered me. "That? It's just the old family cabin. No one has stayed there recently, it's pretty run down." But hopefully it will be made whole again. Our family used to stay there all the time, maybe they can again soon. Come on. He waved me on, and as we passed the cabin more closely, I saw it was in ruins. The ceiling had collapsed in places, and the wood was rotted and decayed all over. It was a wreck, and I figured they would have to do some serious renovation before any of their family members would be living there again anytime soon. As I looked at it, I felt something strange. The building felt wrong somehow, like it shouldn't be there at all. The entire place held an intangibly ancient quality. I suddenly felt very nervous about camping so close to it. I was about to say something to Summer, but she put an arm around me and leaned her head on my shoulder and guided me along the path to the lookout, leaving my questions unanswered. We made it up the incline to the plateau, and I was impressed by the cloudless sky and the shining stars above. I could see why this place was so special to their family, and for a short while, I was grateful that they had included me in this tradition. If Sean had not been there, I would have considered proposing to Summer, but I never expected what happened next. Summer reverently cradled the lantern and was using a small piece of chalk to draw lines on the ground while singing something. It was odd. At first, I thought it was another song, but it had low tones and rhythms that were more like a chant. Sean had not moved onto the plateau, he just stood by the trail leading back down. He was holding the cattle prod and the knife now. He seemed to have an anguished look on his face, like something bad had just happened. I was confused by what was going on, and then Summer spoke. "O great spirit that dwells in this place, we supplicate ourselves to you. We offer you the lifeblood and vitality of humanity, so that you may continue to bless us and watch over this sacred place and our family. Eternal peace for this place, eternal peace to the offering. You have been chosen to become one with this place, to become family. Blessed be." She had finished drawing the strange markings on the ground and looked up at me solemnly. "I am so sorry. I really did care for you, but this place, this sacred land, we need to take care of it. Look around us, it's dying, only an offering can restore the vitality that was lost. You have to understand, please don't resist." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I finally snapped out of the shock paralysis I was in and responded. "Wait, Summer, what the hell is this? Some type of cult ritual? You guys can't be serious, you are just pranking me, right?" "It has to be," I asked with a slight laugh to try and see how they reacted. Summer's face was still grave, and Sean had walked closer to us, his hands gripping the weapon so tightly I could see his knuckles turning white. "No, stay back," I shouted out vainly as Summer just nodded while looking past me and at Sean. "Strike true, for the Sylvian, for the family. Don't hesitate," she shouted. I turned back to see Sean moving toward me at speed. He held out the prod, and it sparked to life. "Don't struggle, this can all be over soon," he said with a hesitant mixture of fear and aggression. I held out a hand and tried to discourage him, but he pressed on, and I leapt back and suffered a shock as the prod made contact with me. He lunged forward, and I fell back, dodging a clumsy stab with the knife. Summer was standing still, watching us and chanting quietly. I felt numbing pain, and my body convulsed as the prod was driven into my ribs. The pain was excruciating, but it didn't hold me as long as a proper taser might have. I saw the reluctance in Sean's eyes, and he actually closed them while stabbing the knife down at me. I was able to regain enough motion to roll away, and when the knife crashed down onto the ground, I leaned back and kicked him hard in the face. Sean went flying, and I heard the satisfying sound of his face crunching and a tooth flying. Summer stopped chanting and gasped, as if she was surprised I had resisted. I turned back to her and saw a look of contempt on her face. "You need to stop," she shouted indignantly. "Can't you see what has happened to this place? It needs to be rain-fused with life. You can be that life, you can save us all." She lunged forward and tried to grapple me. I pushed her away just in time to avoid a stab by Sean, who had recovered. I saw he had dropped the cattle prod, and I dove forward to collect it before either of them could. When he lunged again, I stabbed the prod out and struck his neck. He fell forward and dropped the knife in pain. I bent down to collect it, but Summer kicked out hard and struck me in the side. I rolled over and tried to get up, but my head was struck by a hard stomp, and I nearly passed out from the impact. I had to move, I knew I was in trouble. I saw Sean looming over me, he spat out some blood, and the reservation on his face from earlier was gone, nothing but anger remained. Summer was getting up and moving out of the way to give him a clear shot. As he prepared to stab the knife down, I aimed the prod at Summer's leg, and the shock caused her to collapse on top of me. There was a terrible moment where I heard the slicing sound of flesh and knew someone had been stabbed. I felt nothing but the pain of the wind being knocked out of me. I looked up to see Summer, her eyes were wide and pleading. We both looked down to see the blossoming blood stain on her, and I looked past her to see Sean holding the knife with a look of shocked horror. He had stabbed her in the back. He backed away and began crying. Summer rolled off me, and I scrambled away and stood up. I looked around and saw the odd drawings on the ground begin to glow, and Summer's blood seemed to be absorbed by the impossible characters. I was stunned, but was reminded of the danger when I regarded Sean. I held out a hand and tried to control the situation, though I did not really think he would listen to me just then. Sean was pulling his hair and hyperventilating. He looked seconds away from a mental breakdown. "Sean," I said as calmly as I could muster. "You don't have to do this. I know you're scared, but I think you were forced here, right?" I asked, trying to sound as empathetic as possible. He just shook his head, and the look of fear faded away to reveal a snarl of unsuppressed rage. "You," he murmured, and then his voice grew louder. "You killed her. It's your fault. You should have just stayed down and died. We need to bring this place back. You need to die." He charged at me like a rabid animal, and when I tried to hold the prod out and stop him, it did nothing. He barreled on and took me down in a clumsy tackle. I rolled along with him to try to take the weapon, but we rolled too far, and we both launched off the edge of the plateau. I should have died from that fall. I still don't know how I didn't. I remember falling, but I ended up landing on some type of natural outcropping and just rattling my bones. Sean fell down much further, though all I really remember was the blood-curdling scream as he did. I woke up in a haze, and I could barely move. I think I had a concussion from the force. I hit my head when I landed, but I was just grateful to be alive. It was daytime, and I didn't know how long I had been out. I was incredibly thirsty and felt dehydrated and sallow, so it might have been for hours, if not days. I managed to find a steep path that led back down to the main trail. I had to get out of there and get help. I hustled back to the campground and passed a disturbing sight. There were faded blood stains on the ground and human outline in the dirt near where Sean would have landed, but no body was there. I shuddered at the thought that he might still be out there hunting me, but he couldn't have survived that fall. Then I noticed the odd emergence of a large root cluster that seemed to crowd around the imprint his body had left. It seemed like they were surging and lapping at something, like they had a terrible sentience I could not guess. I shuddered when I stared at the morbid sight. I suddenly felt sure that Sean really was dead. I shambled along through the forest, and when I got back to the campground, I was stunned. The entire area seemed healthy now. It was all green and vibrant. I could hear birds singing, animals moved all throughout the woods, and the gray pallor was gone. Just the other day, the place looked like a dead zone, but now it was alive again. I was about to leave when a nagging thought made me stay. I walked off in a daze, wandering from the campground. I let out an exhausted laugh as I considered the insanity I had just witnessed. I had planned to stay there with the girl I loved, only to have seen her die after trying to kill me. And now there I was, wandering, half dead in the woods that were so important to her family, alive and well just like my surroundings. I marched on, up the trail and to the plateau. I looked out over the forest and saw the same as before. Dried blood where summer had fallen, but no body. The strange markings on the ground were gone, and I stood there in confused horror, trying to make sense of what had happened. Suddenly, I felt a strange breeze that carried across the area. In the rush of air, I thought I heard an odd tune as it swept over me. A tune I had heard sung for the first time by Summer when we walked under the stars. But the strangest part was that the more I listened, the more it sounded like her. I shuddered and left that place, running back down the trail to try to leave. I ran on, but my pace slackened when I saw the family cabin and could not believe my eyes. The wrecked building was restored somehow. It looked brand new. I inched closer and rubbed my eyes, unable to believe what I was seeing. As I looked over the impossible change, I felt a chilling presence pervade the area, and the door creaked open. There was a light inside, shining just beyond the corner of the now open door. I heard a familiar voice creep into my ear from everywhere and nowhere. "Come inside. Join the family and stay with us, forever." My stupor broke, and I ran. I ran madly out of that impossible forest, leaving Summer, her brother, and the entire nightmare behind me. I don't know what really happened to them. They must have died, but where had the bodies gone? Then I remembered Summer's words, her pledge to the spirits, human blood to renew that scared place. The site had gotten its blood, just not mine. It was definitely beautiful for now, but I will never go back there. I'm going to tell the police about what happened, and hopefully they won't arrest me for murder. Someone needs to know, someone needs to be warned, that the family is still there.
The part of the deep web that we aren't supposed to see. I'll assume you all know about the deep web. Well, what you've heard is true. It's not a great place. While some people are there to score smokable grass or firearms, or even out of sheer curiosity, others, well, they're not up to anything good. But I'm not here to talk about those shickos. I'm here to talk about what lies beyond that point. The more cryptic and unexplainable part of the internet. The part that nobody's supposed to see. There was an infographic that cropped up a while ago. Not sure when. The 8 levels of the internet. Maybe you've seen it. As interesting as it was, it's a complete bunk. I'm sorry, but polymeric falsigold derivation means nothing. And the Primarch system? I guess somebody's a fan of Warhammer. No, there are no quantum mechanics involved here. However, that doesn't mean it was an easy place to find. Now, I'm not going to begin to tell you how to get here. It's unlikely that you'd be able to, even if I did. I'm not tooting my own horn here, I just didn't have a life outside of this. I was warned, of course. Everybody told me I wasn't going to like what I saw. That I wouldn't even understand it. Now I'm passing off that warning to you. Don't try to look for this. There's no official name for this place, or at least I haven't seen one. There were rumors, however. These ranged from an Illuminati chat room to a virtual holding cell for an experimental AI gone rogue. In reality, it's a lot worse. After a long and painful process of breaking down firewalls and encryptions, solving bizarre philosophical riddles, and following hidden links, I was finally directed to a blank page with one line of text and a text box underneath. Quid curis? Latin for what do you seek? I remember feeling surprised. But in retrospect, I didn't know what I was expecting. I'll admit, I was a bit stumped here. Partly because I didn't know the answer to that question. I had no objective, I just wanted to see if I could do it. I tried some generic answers at first. I typed in the truth and enlightenment. You know, matrix poop. Nothing happened. I tried a bunch of answers, but none of them worked. I was getting frustrated at this point. Maybe this was a gag page. Maybe I hadn't figured anything out. If only. I tried something off the wall. Not sure how this came to me or why I thought it would work, but I typed in what also seeks me. Now that I think about it, this thing might have been an AI. To my surprise, the page went blank. Like fully blank. I waited. After about 5 minutes, I was directed to what looked like a forum. No, not even that. It was more basic. Just a list of links over a brownish yellow background. The links themselves were indecipherable. Just seemingly random sequences of characters, symbols, and letters. A lot of them I had never seen before. It almost looked like an alien language. Just a code I didn't understand. At this point, expectations were off the wall. Each link was shot in the dark. I clicked on the first one. It loaded up a live feed of what seemed to be the Paris catacombs. I watched for a while, but it was ultimately uneventful. I moved on to the next link. It was a shaky video in a dark setting. But I could make out men in tactical gear. They were in a house, opening doors and sweeping each room. Eventually, they kicked one down to reveal a creature. Tall and humanoid, with scaly skin. It was gnawing on a dismembered arm. They tried shooting at it, but it escaped out the window. The video stopped there. Well, I was floored. What the hell was this? It looked too real to be unreleased film footage. I was officially intrigued. Maybe this was worth the months of headaches and bloodshot eyes after all. I couldn't stop now. I started working down the list of links. With each click, everything got more and more bizarre. More disturbing. I stumbled upon a document called the Paragon Project, detailing trials of human experimentation that would lead to superhuman levels of strength and durability. It was an apparent success. Looked official too. There were essays on space-time anomalies, glitches in reality, and apparent pictures of alternate dimensions. There were detailed explanations regarding Area 51, the Bermuda Triangle, assassinations, disappearances, and the true nature of the Holy Grail. One of the more upsetting ones was a document referring to a world-ending bomb. A nuke that's 720,000 times stronger than the one dropped on Hiroshima. I don't want to know why we would need that. I found contingency plans for different kinds of apocalypses, nuclear winter, biological weapons, and viral outbreaks. Some more peculiar ones were called the Marianas Trench Abnormality, the bluntly labeled Strange Man on the 15th floor, and one simply referred to as Blackout. Recovered logs of skinwalker hunting expeditions, 911 transcripts from residents of a town in Texas that went missing in 1977, and even the journals that belonged to the people involved in the Dyatlov Pass incident. They didn't go insane because of the snow. I spent hours on there, looking through pages and pages of things I felt like I wasn't supposed to see. I came across a trailer for a silent film made back in 1910. One that made people claw their eyes out after watching that nearly derailed the whole industry. There was a live stream of a hooded man sitting in front of a camera, head crouched down. He eventually lifted his head. Even though he had no mouth, a deep, guttural hello came through my speakers. Somehow, I knew it came from him. I didn't stick around for that. There were obscure sets of step-by-step guides that involved things like cutting off your limbs and sewing on a corpse, performing religious incantations in the middle of the Siberian forest, and going to coordinates that housed captive fallen angels. It was unclear what any of these were supposed to achieve. There was also a 20 seconds long clip titled The Futility of the Living. I didn't watch it. That's when I realized there was no way even the highest form of organized government had full control of this. One of the scariest things about this whole experience was that I didn't find an end to the list. No matter far I scrolled down. I think I had a meltdown and passed out eventually because I woke up on my floor in the middle of the night. I looked at my computer screen to see looped helicopter footage of a massive, crab-like creature tearing apart a coastal island. I clicked off of it. I just sat there for the longest time. I couldn't comprehend what I was seeing, and I don't think I wanted to. Now, I'm not sure why I kept going. My brain was screaming for me to take my computer out to the lawn and smash it into pieces. But I didn't. I noticed something I hadn't before. A small message at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. I don't know if it was always there or not. It was hard to read, so I had to squint. More Latin. Translated into "Are you satisfied?" There were two options underneath it, yes and no. Now, I knew the answer to this question. Hell no, I wasn't satisfied. I was horrified and scarred for life. But I should have clicked on yes. If I just clicked on yes, it would have taken me out of that godforsaken place. Back to comfort and sanity. Even right now, I can't tell you why I clicked on no. But once I did, the page seemed to refresh. It was still the same basic setup, except there were only 4 links. This time, there were no recognizable numbers or characters. Hell, it didn't look like anything that could have come from this world. Just a collection of extremely crude symbols that didn't give off any sense of pattern or direction. I clicked on the first link. After about 20 seconds, I slammed my computer shut. I can't describe to you what I saw. All I know is that I wasn't supposed to see it. Nobody should ever see something like this. It's not only that it didn't make any sense, but I also can't tell you why it didn't. I couldn't begin to grasp the images I was seeing. It wasn't graphic or anything, not like that. I just couldn't recognize anything. I could make out things moving, but not in a way any creature on Earth has ever moved before. Colors that I'd never seen before. Just thinking about it gives me a splitting headache. This is my best attempt at visualizing it. We have 3 dimensions here on Earth. We can move forwards, backward, left, right, 72.4 degrees southwest, etc. These things weren't restricted to that. I can't explain it any further. All I know is that I didn't want to watch one more second. I don't think I would have been able to. I left my room. For the first time in a while, I was planning to leave my house. I needed fresh air. To take a walk or something. Hell, I was thinking about running a marathon in the middle of the night just to get my mind off of that poop for a few hours. I was putting on my jacket when I heard a knock at the door. I stopped dead in my tracks. I wasn't opening up. About a minute and 5 more sets of knocks came before somebody spoke up. Open up. We know what you did, but we're not here to hurt you. We just want to talk. The tone wasn't threatening. Eventually, I obliged. I opened up my door to 2 tall, slim men in suits. They smiled at me. Can we come in? I still don't know how they found me. I thought for sure that I was off the grid. We sat down on the couch. I guess I was just waiting for answers at this point. One of them looked at me and said, "What were you looking for?" "I don't know. But I'm not going back," I responded. He smiled again. Like this is what he wanted to hear. The other one piped up, "Whom do you work for?" His tone was a bit more aggressive. I just shook my head. Look, I didn't know what I was getting into. I wasn't looking for anything. They just stared at me for a while. I'm not gonna tell anybody. Trust me. They finally responded, "We're not worried about that. Doubt anybody believes you." Another smile. Somehow it felt genuine. "We just wanted to know what your priorities were." In retrospect, that was a very strange question. "Just do us a favor and we'll leave." I perked up. "Give us the device you used to access it." I didn't ask any questions. I ran upstairs and tossed them my laptop. They both smirked at me one last time before heading for the door. Just as they were about to leave, one of them turned back. "I don't think you need to be told, but don't try this again. And don't show anybody else how to get there either." "Well, no. I didn't ask who they were. I'm not sure I would have wanted to know. It's been a week now. I don't go on the internet so much anymore. After this, I'm going to try and forget. To try not to think about it anymore. I've started having horrific nightmares. Been seeing a therapist for that, but I don't think it's helping. Anyways, I'm not going to let this consume the rest of my life. The thing is, I'm afraid this might not be possible. There are some things we aren't supposed to know about. Probably for our safety and sanity. Don't try and seek them out. It's better that way. However, it might be a bit too late for me."